Russian warship recklessly and madly attacked the U.S. aircraft carrier. April 2025. The North Atlantic is dark, starless. Above the water, the pride of American naval power, a 100,000-ton nuclear aircraft carrier escorted by destroyers and submarines, moves silently through the waves. To the 5,000 sailors on board, it seems like another night on watch, another patrol far from home. But in Moscow, a different plan is underway. Suddenly, the radar picks up the first signals. 30 Russian cruise missiles launched from warships, 20 more from submarines, and above them, a swarm of 50 suicide drones loaded with explosives. It is one of the largest coordinated naval attacks of the century, a three-pronged attack aimed at the heart of the U.S. Navy. For veterans and American citizens watching from afar, the message was clear. This was not just an attack on a ship, but a challenge to American supremacy. And the answer would shape what happened next. At 4:30 a.m., the calm waters of the North Atlantic carried the massive silhouette of a U.S. carrier strike group. The 100,000-ton nuclear-powered aircraft carrier cut through the waves like a steel fortress, its decks lined with F-35C fighters, radar arrays scanning the horizon. For the sailors on board, it felt like another routine patrol, until the first alarms shattered the silence. In the span of seconds, intelligence confirmed the unthinkable. 30 Russian cruise missiles had just been launched from warships, their deadly payloads racing across the sky at supersonic speed. Beneath the waves, a Russian submarine added another 20 cruise missiles, rising from the deep with terrifying precision. And overhead, radar screens lit up with swarms of dots. 50 suicide drones loaded with explosives, maneuvering like a pack of wolves hunting their prey. This was no random strike. It was a carefully orchestrated assault, a multi-layered attack designed to overwhelm the defenses of the most powerful navy on Earth. Missiles from the sea, missiles from below, and drones from the skies. A three-pronged hammer blow meant to cripple America's pride, the carrier itself. If they think they can break the backbone of the U.S. Navy, they are gravely mistaken. This ship is not just steel. It is America's promise. Admiral Jonathan Reynolds, U.S. Navy. For the 5,000 sailors on board, the mood shifted instantly from calm vigilance to raw survival. Alarms blared, crewmen raced to battle stations, and every weapon system locked on to the incoming storm. The captain's voice thundered across the intercom. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not a drill." The night sky, once quiet, was now alive with trails of fire. In that moment, the U.S. carrier strike group found itself at the center of one of the largest naval missile assaults in modern history. In the face of this massive and unexpected attack, do you think the U.S. Navy had the time to stop it? The first wave of Russian missiles streaked across the radar, glowing red on the screens like daggers pointed at the carrier. But the U.S. Navy had prepared for this very nightmare. Within seconds, the multi-layered American defense shield came alive, unleashing a symphony of firepower designed to destroy threats at every altitude and distance. At the outer perimeter, Aegis destroyers deployed SM-6 interceptors, sleek, hypersonic defenders traveling at nearly Mach 3.5. One by one, they locked on and tore through Russian cruise missiles, detonating them in blinding flashes that lit up the night sky. In less than 2 minutes, over 20 incoming warheads were annihilated before they could approach striking distance. Yet the attack didn't end. From beneath the waves, submarine-launched missiles rose higher, closer, more dangerous. That's when the second layer of defense roared to life. Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, ESSM, erupted from vertical launch cells aboard the carrier's escorts, neutralizing the undersea-launched missiles with deadly accuracy. The sea shook as fragments of burning metal splashed down into the black water. Above the carrier itself, laser defense systems tracked the incoming swarm of suicide drones. Each beam of concentrated energy burned through wings and fuselages, dropping UAVs like smoking wrecks into the ocean. For those drones that slipped closer, Phalanx CIWS Gatling guns opened fire, 6 barrels spinning at 4,500 rounds per minute, turning the night into a wall of tracer fire. Sailors on deck described the sound as a metallic thunderstorm. Still, numbers matter. Out of 50 drones, 48 were destroyed before reaching the carrier. Two managed to break through. They slammed into the stern of the ship, erupting in fireballs that rattled the steel giant. The blast tore holes in the deck plating, injuring 3 sailors critically and 5 more with burns and shrapnel wounds. The ship held steady, but the shock was undeniable. Russia had drawn blood. But if the Kremlin thought this would cripple American resolve, they were wrong. Even as medics rushed to treat the wounded, orders crackled across the fleet, prepare to strike back. Within moments, launch bays opened. U.S. drones armed with precision mini-bombs rose into the air, engines screaming as they formed swarms. Across the sea, American fast attack craft began powering up, preparing to deliver retaliation with brutal speed. The Russian onslaught had failed to sink the carrier. Now, the U.S. Navy's fury was about to be unleashed. Before entering the sharp counterattack of the U.S. Customs, please like and subscribe to the channel to support us. Now join me in the center of the battle. The flames from the drone blasts had barely faded when the carrier commander gave the order that shook the fleet. Strike back, with everything we have. From the deck and escorts, 80 American mini-UAVs surged into the night sky. Each carried a 15-pound precision charge, small enough to evade radar but powerful enough to shred steel. Flying in chaotic swarms of 10, they split into 8 separate waves, overwhelming Russian defenses. Within 7 minutes, over 40 Russian radar arrays and missile launch stations were obliterated, leaving the enemy ships blind and defenseless. Then came the second hammer blow. 30 unmanned U.S. fast attack boats, each packed with 500 pounds of high explosives, raced forward at nearly 60 knots. Russian gunners fired more than 6,000 rounds trying to stop them, but their tracers only lit the path of destruction. 17 boats broke through, ramming into Russian hulls with devastating force. The results were catastrophic. 2 destroyers sank in under 5 minutes, a 3rd frigate crippled and burning, and more than 300 Russian sailors forced into the water. Across the open radio bands, the sound of desperation was undeniable. Russian officers screamed for air cover that never came, their voices breaking as their fleet dissolved around them. The humiliation was total. A force that had launched 100 combined weapons in its opening strike was now shattered by smaller, faster, deadlier American systems. For the U.S. sailors, this was more than defense. It was righteous fury. The Navy had taken a hit. 8 men injured, 3 critical. And now it was delivering payback with surgical precision. The Russian attack, meant to cripple a carrier, had instead unleashed its own nightmare, and the American counteroffensive was still climbing toward full force. Don't leave yet. This is the most dramatic part of the war. The sea was still boiling with fire when the second phase of America's counterstrike began. Deep beneath the waves, a U.S. attack submarine silently adjusted its course. Then, with a roar that sailors described as the ocean itself opening, it released 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Each carried a 1,000-pound warhead, programmed to strike Russian command ships and ammunition depots. The missiles skimmed low across the water, their silhouettes invisible against the black horizon. Within minutes, they slammed into the heart of the Russian formation. One missile detonated inside the bridge of a flagship frigate, killing its command crew instantly. Another struck an ammunition hold. The explosion was so violent it shattered steel, hurling debris hundreds of feet into the air. By the time the barrage ended, 2 Russian warships were burning wrecks, and more than 150 sailors were dead or missing. But the assault didn't stop there. Rising above the carrier group, 4 U.S. Navy helicopters thundered into the night sky. Each carried 5 Navy SEALs, veterans armed with miniguns capable of firing 4,000 rounds per minute. As the choppers roared low over the crippled Russian ships, their guns opened up. Streams of glowing tracers poured across enemy decks, shredding any weapon still mounted and cutting down pockets of resistance. Survivors dove for cover, but there was nowhere to hide. The contrast was undeniable. Russia's attack had relied on complex, massive barrages, yet it collapsed against layered defenses. America's response, by comparison, was brutally simple. Missiles from the depths, helicopters from the sky, and men with unbreakable discipline. It was not the sheer number of weapons, but the precision, the timing, and the coordination that turned the tide. On Russian frequencies, the humiliation grew louder. distressed captains begged for evacuation. Gunners fired sporadically into the dark, hitting nothing. One Russian officer's final transmission crackled across open channels. "We cannot hold! The fleet is lost!" For the Americans, this was vindication. Their carrier had been struck, their sailors wounded, but their response left no doubt. The ocean belonged to the U.S. Navy, and the Russian fleet, once so confident, was now reduced to burning steel and broken voices echoing across the sea. By dawn, the North Atlantic was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. The once proud Russian strike group, which only hours earlier had unleashed 100 combined weapons in its furious assault, now lay in ruins. The sea was littered with twisted steel, burning oil slicks, and the cries of desperate men. Out of a fleet of 8 major warships and dozens of support vessels, only 3 remained afloat, all crippled, burning, and without command. The rest had been sent to the bottom, torn apart by American firepower. U.S. reconnaissance later confirmed that over 600 Russian sailors were killed, more than 400 wounded, and at least 200 taken prisoner. Many were plucked from the freezing water by American helicopters. Humiliated survivors, stripped of their weapons, trembling as they realized the empire that sent them had abandoned them. The scenes on deck told a story of total collapse. Russian prisoners, wrapped in thermal blankets, were lined up under guard. Some hung their heads in silence, others shouted angrily at their officers who had fled or died. A few wept openly. For men who had been promised glory, the humiliation was unbearable. On the American side, the message was clear. Discipline and coordination had defeated chaos and arrogance. The U.S. Navy hadn't needed endless barrages. Just the right weapons, launched at the right time by crews trained to perfection. 12 missiles from a submarine, 4 helicopters with 20 SEALs, 80 unmanned aerial vehicles, 30 fast attack craft. Together, this carefully orchestrated counterstrike erased an entire Russian battle group in less than 2 hours. As the carrier strike group regrouped, damage control teams repaired the stern of the ship. The injured, 3 sailors in critical condition and 5 more with burns and shrapnel wounds, were stabilized by Navy medics. The carrier, despite the attempted blow, remained operational, its runways ready for flight. The symbol of American sea power had not been broken. It had endured and then delivered justice. For Washington, the images broadcast back home were staggering. The nation saw Russian ships burning like torches, their men rescued not as warriors, but as captives. Veterans watching from their living rooms recognize the echoes of history. When America is struck, it rises stronger. In the end, the battle was not just about missiles and ships, it was about resolve. Russia had gambled everything on one massive strike, and lost everything in return. America had shown that courage, training, and unity still rule the seas. And for the millions of older Americans watching, many of whom had lived through the Cold War, the conclusion was unmistakable. The Navy is still the shield of the Republic, and no enemy can break its will. The night had begun with shock and fury. Russia had hurled 100 weapons, 30 cruise missiles, 20 submarine-launched strikes, and 50 suicide drones at a single American carrier. Their goal was humiliation, perhaps even destruction. Yet by dawn, the story was reversed. The U.S. Navy's layered defenses had held. The carrier, though shaken and scarred, still sailed. And the Russian fleet, once boasting of power, had been reduced to wreckage, smoke, and silence. What shocked the world was not just the destruction of ships, but the numbers. 600 Russian sailors dead, 400 wounded, 200 captured. Entire vessels erased in minutes by precise American counterstrikes. 12 Tomahawks from beneath the sea, 4 helicopters with 20 SEALs, 80 unmanned aerial vehicles, 30 fast attack craft. A simple formula, but executed with flawless coordination. This was not technology alone. It was discipline, training, and the unbreakable spirit of a Navy that refuses to bow. For the families of the wounded sailors, the cost was real. 3 critically injured, 5 more hurt. A reminder that freedom and strength are never free. But their sacrifice stood as proof. America's defenders are willing to risk everything to ensure that no enemy strike will ever succeed. And for Russia, the humiliation was total. They had hoped for triumph. Instead, they became a cautionary tale. A reminder that arrogance on the seas leads only to ruin when it collides with the steel shield of the United States. To every viewer, especially those who remember the long nights of the Cold War, this battle is proof that America still stands tall. Our Navy still guards the oceans. Our resolve is unbroken, and when tested, we will always fight back, harder, faster, and stronger. If you value this analysis and believe in sharing the truth, support our channel. Like, comment, and tell us. Do you believe America's Navy remains the unchallenged guardian of the seas? Your voice matters. Stay with us, and together, we'll continue uncovering the lessons of history and the battles shaping our future.